At Thanksgiving, my husband's mom made a speech. We're grateful for strong family bonds, the kind that survive even temporary distractions. Then she looked at me. I raised my glass and said, "Cheers to distractions that get invited to every holiday." Thanksgiving has always been a big deal in my husband's family. His mother, Margaret, hosts it every year at her grand estate in Connecticut. The house is massive, with a long driveway, manicured lawns, and a dining room that could seat 20 people comfortably. She prides herself on tradition and appearances. This year, the tension was palpable. Ever since Daniel and I had our daughter, Lily, Margaret's controlling nature had intensified. She had opinions on everything from how we should raise Lily to how I should dress. It was exhausting. As we gathered around the table, Margaret stood up to make her annual toast. She raised her glass and said, "We're grateful for strong family bonds, the kind that survive even temporary distractions." Her eyes locked onto mine as she said the last part. I felt the blood rush to my face. Everyone else looked uncomfortable, staring at their plates or glancing around nervously. I took a deep breath, raised my glass, and said, "Cheers to distractions that get invited to every holiday." The room fell silent. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. Margaret's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered, moving on to carve the turkey. After dinner, as guests mingled in the living room, Margaret cornered me in the kitchen. "That was uncalled for," she said, her voice low but firm. "So was your toast," I replied, keeping my tone even. She narrowed her eyes. "I was simply acknowledging the importance of family." "By implying I'm a distraction?" She didn't respond, just turned and walked away. Daniel and I left shortly after, citing Lily's bedtime as an excuse. In the car, he apologized for his mother's behavior. I appreciated his support, but I knew this wasn't over. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about Margaret's comment. It wasn't just the toast. It was a culmination of years of subtle digs and passive-aggressive remarks. I decided it was time to take control. I started documenting every interaction with Margaret. I saved emails, text messages, and even recorded some of our conversations. I wasn't planning to expose her, but I wanted to understand her patterns and anticipate her moves. I also began strengthening my relationships with other family members. I hosted small gatherings, reached out to Daniel's siblings, and made an effort to be more involved. I wanted them to see me as a valuable member of the family, not just an outsider. In the spring, Margaret announced she was organizing a charity gala. She mentioned needing a keynote speaker with experience in community outreach. I saw an opportunity. I reached out to the charity board and offered my services pro bono. With my background in social work and public speaking, they eagerly accepted. When Margaret found out, she was livid. "You're overstepping," she snapped. "I'm contributing," I replied calmly. The gala was a success. My speech received a standing ovation, and several donors pledged significant amounts. Margaret was forced to acknowledge my efforts publicly. Over time, the dynamics began to shift. Family members started approaching me for advice, valuing my opinions. Daniel became more assertive, defending our decisions against his mother's criticisms. Margaret, sensing her influence waning, tried to regain control. She attempted to host exclusive events, deliberately excluding me. But Daniel refused to attend without me, and others followed suit. Realizing her tactics were failing, Margaret confronted me. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. "Respect," I replied. There was a long pause before she nodded, a silent truce forming between us. The following Thanksgiving, we hosted dinner at our home. Margaret arrived with a homemade pie and a genuine smile. As we sat down to eat, she raised her glass. "To family bonds that grow stronger through understanding and respect," she toasted. I smiled, clinking my glass with hers. The past was behind us and a new chapter had begun. I wanted to believe the peace would last. That maybe, just maybe, Margaret had finally accepted me. But in the back of my mind, I had doubts. I'd seen too much. I'd lived through too many fake smiles from her to trust a sudden change. It started small. Daniel came home one day looking confused. Mom wants to take Lily for a weekend. Just the two of them. That alone didn't bother me. But she had never asked for that before. Not once in 4 years. She was always the type to say kids needed their parents, especially their mothers. What's the reason? I asked. She said she wants to bond. Said she feels like she missed out. I didn't say anything out loud, but my gut was screaming. I told Daniel I wasn't comfortable with the idea. He understood. He backed me up. We told Margaret no. Her response? Silence. No guilt trip. No complaints. That silence was worse. A month later, Daniel got a new assistant at work. Her name was Chloe. Young, fresh out of grad school. Pretty in that overly polished way. Bleach blonde hair, fake nails, tight skirts, everything Margaret once complained about when talking about today's women. And yet, Margaret loved Chloe. They started having lunch. Just the two of them. Daniel thought it was odd but brushed it off. I didn't. Margaret had never shown interest in any of Daniel's coworkers before. Not even the ones he worked with for years. One afternoon, Daniel left his laptop open while putting Lily to bed. I walked by and saw his calendar. A dinner reservation titled, Dinner, Mom plus Chloe. I froze. I clicked the event. It was scheduled at a fancy restaurant. One we had our anniversary dinner at last year. Why would his mother and his assistant need a dinner together? I didn't say anything at first. I needed to be sure. I called the restaurant. Hi, I'm confirming a reservation for Thursday night, 7 p.m., under the name Daniel. They said yes. But it wasn't a table for 3. It was a table for 2. I hung up and sat down, shaking. My chest felt tight. Not because I thought Daniel was cheating, I knew him too well. But something was happening. Something that felt a lot like setup. When he got home that night, I asked casually, "How was dinner?" He looked confused. Dinner? I grabbed a sandwich from the deli. I stared at him. With your mom and Chloe? Now he looked really confused. What? That was canceled. Chloe had to stay late. Why? I showed him the calendar. His face went pale. I didn't put this in. I didn't even know it was still there. That's when we both knew someone else had added it. Daniel checked his calendar access settings. Only 2 people had permission to edit, his assistant, Chloe, and his mom. He asked Chloe the next day. She claimed she never added it. She acted surprised, but she stuttered. Her voice trembled. Daniel didn't believe her. When he asked Margaret, she denied everything. She looked offended. Hurt, even. Why would I do something like that, she said. But something in her eyes told the truth. She was setting me up. Why? I didn't know yet. 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a screenshot. It showed Margaret texting Chloe, "Keep being sweet to him. She won't last much longer." I felt like throwing up. I texted back, "Who is this?" No reply. I showed Daniel. His face turned red with rage. He called his mom immediately. She denied it, said someone must have faked the screenshot. But Daniel had it verified. He asked a friend in tech who confirmed the number was hers. Margaret didn't apologize. She didn't even try to make excuses. She just got cold. She stopped coming around. Stopped calling. Sent gifts for Lily but refused to talk to me. Daniel was torn. Part of him still wanted to believe his mother could change. But he couldn't ignore the facts. I didn't push him. I knew he had to come to terms with it in his own time. But I wasn't done. I had a plan. One weekend, while Daniel took Lily to the park, I decided to clean out the hall closet. We had shoved a bunch of old boxes in there when we moved 3 years ago and never touched them again. At the bottom of a box labeled miscellaneous, I found something strange. It was a silver picture frame. The photo was missing, but I recognized the frame instantly. It used to sit on Margaret's mantel, between her wedding photo and a crystal vase. Why was it in our house? I flipped it over. On the back, scribbled in faded ink, were the words, Britt and Daniel, summer 17. Britt? There was never a Britt. At least, not one I'd ever heard of. When Daniel got home, I showed it to him. His face dropped. He sat down. Quiet. Still. Then finally he said, Britt was someone I almost married. Before you. What happened? She left. Disappeared. Told me she couldn't deal with my mom anymore. I couldn't let it go. Daniel never talked about his past relationships. I respected that. But now I felt like Margaret had left breadcrumbs on purpose. That picture frame wasn't left by accident. I did what any curious person would do. I looked Britt up. Found her on Facebook under her full name, Brittany Fields. She was living in New Jersey, working as a nurse. No public posts. But I saw enough to know she was real and alive. I messaged her. Polite. Non-threatening. Just, hi, I'm Daniel's wife. Would you be open to talking about something? It's not what you think. She responded 2 days later. Britt agreed to talk over the phone. I waited until Lily was asleep and Daniel was out running errands. Her voice was calm, tired, but clear. I left because of Margaret, she said. I wasn't weak. I was scared. Of what? Of what she's capable of. I didn't breathe for a moment. Britt told me things that made my blood run cold. Margaret had once sent anonymous letters to Britt's boss, accusing her of theft. She accidentally bumped Britt's car in the parking lot after an argument. She even paid someone to follow her for 2 weeks. She warned me that I would never last, Britt said. She said Daniel belongs to her. That I was just a phase. I told Daniel everything. Played the recording with Britt's permission. Watched his face shift from confusion to anger to complete disbelief. I always thought Britt left because of me, he whispered. No. Your mother made her run. Daniel sat with that for hours. He didn't speak. Didn't eat. Just sat. Later that night, he said, I need to confront her. He called her. Asked to meet at a local cafe. I went with him, but sat 2 tables away. Margaret showed up wearing her best pearls, acting like nothing was wrong. Daniel didn't waste time. Why did you try to destroy Britt's life? She blinked. I don't know what you're talking about. I spoke to her. She told me everything. And I believe her. Margaret didn't deny it. She smiled. She wasn't right for you. You don't get to decide that. You think this one is, she said, jerking her chin in my direction. You think she's different? Yes, he said. She's better. Stronger. Smarter. Margaret's eyes turned to ice. She stood up, leaned in close to him, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she walked out. In the car, I asked, what did she say? Daniel hesitated. She said, let's see how long she lasts now that she's poking around in old dirt. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about that whisper chilled me more than anything else. Margaret wasn't just bitter. She was planning something. A week later, I got an email from a major nonprofit based in Boston. A job offer. Executive director role. High salary. Big benefits. But I never applied. I showed Daniel. He raised an eyebrow. You think she's behind it? I don't know. But it doesn't make sense. I replied to the email, asking who referred me. They responded, your mother-in-law, Margaret Allen. She was trying to get me out of state, out of his life. Then something unexpected happened. I got a call from Daniel's older cousin, Robert. He was one of the few in the family who had always been polite, but distant. He said, we need to talk. About Margaret. We met at a diner. She did it to me too, he said. My wife. Our marriage. Margaret interfered until my wife left. Then she told the family my wife cheated. She didn't. Margaret lied. I stared at him. Why are you telling me this now? Because someone in the family finally has the guts to stand up to her. After meeting with Robert, I couldn't sit still. If Margaret had destroyed more than one marriage and almost ruined mine, there had to be more. I went looking. Robert said Margaret kept a drawer locked in her home office, even when guests came over. She called it her archive. Old photos, letters, family stuff, supposedly. Daniel agreed to help. He had a spare key to her house, something she gave him years ago for emergencies. We waited until she was out at her country club. Daniel distracted the housekeeper. I went into the office. The drawer was locked, but not hard to break. Inside were folders. Dozens. Labeled with names. Some I recognized a family. Others I didn't. I pulled the one marked Brit. Inside were printouts of emails, photos of her house, even a copy of her job offer from years ago. It was surveillance. Like she was building cases against everyone. And there was one with my name too. I opened mine. Inside was a photo of me from 5 years ago. At a bar, laughing. With my ex-boyfriend. Just a drink. Harmless. I was with coworkers that night. Margaret had written, "Still in contact with X," across the top in red pen. There was also a printout of a Facebook comment I made under a parenting article where I disagreed with a popular method. She wrote, "Unfit mother?" It was clear. She had been collecting dirt, or trying to make me look bad, in case she needed it. I felt sick. Daniel said we had to bring it all into the open. No more games. We gathered everyone. His siblings. His cousins. Even Margaret's sister. We laid it all out on the table, literally. We printed the emails, the photos, the calendar entries, the screenshot from Chloe, everything in the folders. Then we read her texts out loud, including the one where she told Chloe she won't last much longer. The room was silent. Some cried. Margaret walked in halfway through. She saw the papers, the faces. She froze. Then she laughed. A cold, bitter sound. "You think this is betrayal?" "No. You are the ones who turned against me." She started walking out. Daniel stood up. "You're done, Mom. You're not part of our lives anymore. Don't contact us. Don't come near Lily. This is over." She didn't respond. 2 days later, her lawyer sent Daniel an email saying she'd removed him from her will. We laughed. We didn't want her money. 3 months passed. Quietly. Peacefully. Then Chloe contacted me. She quit working for Margaret after that night. She also sent me an apology. I got caught up. I wanted to impress her. I thought she could help my career. I was wrong. She also included one more thing. A recorded voicemail. Margaret whispering, "Get close to him. Make her doubt him. She'll break. Just like Brit." I thought it was over. I really did. But one night, I found myself messaging my ex. The one from the photo in the folder. Just to see how he was doing. Harmless, I thought. Daniel found out. He didn't yell. He didn't slam doors. He just looked at me, disappointed. "Why?" he asked. I had no answer. Maybe Margaret had gotten in my head, even after all that. Maybe her doubts still echoed inside me. We went to therapy. It took time, but I owned it. I didn't make excuses. I made amends. We moved. Out of Connecticut. Out of reach. Started fresh. Blocked her number. Changed emails. Kept Lily far from it all. We built a new life where no one knew us as her family. Just ours. But I never forgot. I still keep the folders. All of them. Because people like Margaret don't stop. They wait. They watch. And I'll be ready.